Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Wade Watches. I'm Wade. Welcome to, you guys already know what this is, another fresh out of the movie theater review. Where today, although I'm, kind of, as they say, late to the party seeing this, I'm reviewing Blumhouse's latest film, Drop, directed by Christopher Landon, same guy who gave us Happy Death Day, which I have not seen, but I've heard good things about, and starring, what's her name, Megan Fahey and Brandon Skellner. So, in the case of me, like, being late to this movie, it's nothing against, like, nothing against, like, the movie itself, and I'm talking, like, even before I even saw it. It didn't look god awful to me. I did see the trailers play before other films, but honestly, it was just me being, like, just caught up in the hype for my most anticipated movies of, the month of April this month. And those would be Warfare and Sinners. Like, it was just like a case of me going, like, I'm gonna love these two movies. And I saw those two movies and I loved the hell out of both of them. And if you see my reviews for those two films, I was praising them up and down, man. So I was like, yeah, like these are the priority films that I have to go out and see this month during April. And I kind of, like, almost forgot about Drop, which once again, looked interesting. But also what was working against Drop was Blumhouse's earlier installments this year. I was really disappointed by Wolfman. Sort of disappointed by The Woman in the Yard. That film worked a little bit better than Wolfman, but I was still kind of, like, underwhelmed. So when I saw that this was another Blumhouse project, all in all, like, at the end of the day, it's going to be labeled a Blumhouse movie, I was just kind of like, yeah, I don't think I need to really run out and see this. I could wait for it to drop on streaming. You see what I did there? But then I just kind of, like, out of the blue, I was like, you know what? This does kind of look interesting. So I saw it, and it was really interesting. Not only that, but it was actually a very solid claustrophobic thriller from start to finish, and there were moments where I literally was on the edge of my seat. It is a very effective claustrophobic thriller, and it is definitely Blumhouse's best film of 2025 so far. I think we got Megan 2.0 coming out, and I will say, in all honesty, I doubt that this will, like, that'll top Drop, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see, because I was kind of wrong about Drop, being a good movie. I thought it would be, like, decent but pretty forgettable, but it was not, and it's definitely Blumhouse's best of 2025 thus far. So let's get into what works about this claustrophobic thriller. First thing that works is that, in being, that claustrophobic film that pretty much does take place in, this one location, which that would be the restaurant if you've seen the trailers, and the trailers pretty much tell you what's going on, and you guys know how I am, love to keep things vague. Even if it's in the trailer, I like to keep things vague. And that can only work if you're, really attached to the two central characters here, which would be, these two folks on their first date. First, the main protagonist, whom this is all happening to, is played by Megan Fahey, and there's her date, played by Brandon Skellner. And it's one of those things where you don't get a lot of backstory leading up to the date, leading up to them arriving at this restaurant. It pretty much just, like, gives you, like, this flash, then you get to the restaurant, and more is revealed about the two of them as the film goes along. And I really did dig that approach, because more comes out as they're both dealing with this very fucked up situation, especially Megan Fahey, who really does sell you on really, like, feeling trapped in this shitty situation where she wants to lash out, she wants to, get somebody in on it to, for help, but she literally can't, because she's being held against her will. She really does do a good job of selling that. And Brandon Skellner, man, he's just, like, one of those, like, genuinely nice guys where I was like, I feel so sorry for you, man. Like, you're just a really chill, friendly dude who has no idea what's going on, and you just want, a nice date, and this happens to you. So he does a good job as well of just being this nice dude who is unknowingly caught up in a very messed up situation. And as it goes on, as it escalates, like I said, movie does a good job of putting you on the edge of your seat. You ask yourself at a lot of points, is she going to go through with it? Is she going to do what they say? What's going to happen next? How is she going to get out of this? So on and so forth. And I was there for it, and I really, really enjoyed it. And what's more, I genuinely couldn't wait to get to the reveal. I genuinely was invested in this to the point where I was like, what's going on? Why is this happening to her? Who's doing this? And that, unfortunately, well, just like mildly unfortunately, because I still had a good time with this from start to finish, but that was where this kind of lost steam for me once we do get to what's going on. And not because of the reveal of who it is, because that was actually clever, and you kind of got me there a little bit. Though I figured, it has to be like any given one of these people doing this, but I was still kind of like, oh, okay. But even though the reveal itself didn't bother me, the motivation behind it, I could have used just a little bit more elaboration on that. They give you just enough, fair flashes, because they don't want to insult your intelligence and spoon feed the whole thing to you. So they do give you just enough to make you go like, okay, that's what this is about. That's why they're doing this. But, a little bit more backstory, a little bit more setup, a little bit more of establishing this couldn't have hurt it. And I feel like, in fact, if a little bit more was like, if they had just like slowed down, because it's technically explained, but if they had really slowed down to like touch on what's going on here, I feel like that would have made things more tense and more, edgy than they already were. So that was kind of like a bummer. But other than that, I really don't have, any legitimate complaints about this film. I will say there were like points were and this is like literally a nitpick, because the film already kind of like sets up that it's gonna kind of be this way, but there were kind of like a couple of like scenes that I would kind of call like maybe like goofy, but again, film sets that up because whoever's doing this is sending like these airdrops with memes, so a bit of like comedy woven in didn't ultimately kill it for me. I was just kind of like, maybe we could have played that a little bit more straight here. But nonetheless, I still thoroughly enjoyed Drop, and the comedy actually felt, for the most part, like organic. It wasn't forced in, it wasn't shoved in. It wasn't trying to be a horror comedy. It wasn't trying to be a comedic thriller, because when stuff goes down, it actually is intense, and they're not fucking around, and they really do push that PG-13 rating. So that didn't fully bother me. It's, if nothing else, I'm admitting that that's kind of just a personal nitpick of mine. Could have, that's just my way of saying that it was so good when it was so tense that I could have used like a little bit more tension. I could have used it. I wouldn't have minded if they had gone like completely dark with this, because they were doing such a good job with keeping me on the edge of my seat. So wrapping it up, I'm going to go ahead and give Drop a solid 9 out of 10. Ultimately, there's nothing in it that, justifies me giving it a perfect 10 out of 10. Like, it was something that completely blew me away and took me back like Sinners did. But this is still a solid, does it count as horror? I'm going to call it like a thriller. It's not really horror to me. I guess horror, thriller, whatever you want to call it. It's still a solid film from Blumhouse, and it's definitely their best of 2025 so far. And I guess we can consider it a horror film. I kind of had that like inner conflict. Thriller, horror, it's still a horror film. So it's still one of the best horror films that I've seen in 2025. And man, that genre is really like killing it so far this year, man. Like, I didn't expect like the horror genre to like really like have like be as good as it is so far. We had Locked, which I love that movie, with two horror icons going at it. We had, of course, Sinners, and now we have Drop, man. Like 3 really good horror films in a row. I am loving it. So 9 out of 10 for Drop. This has been another edition of Wade Watches, and I'll see y'all next time. Loving the horror of 2025 so far. Peace.